I'd never tasted wine the way it tasted that night. Warm, sharp, and slow, the way her voice curled around my name when she poured it. She'd left the side door cracked open, a ribbon of soft music spilling into the hallway like it was meant for me to follow. I told myself I was just being polite, stopping by because she'd invited me, because that's what neighbors do. But the second I stepped into her kitchen, the excuse felt thin, almost childish. She stood by the counter, a silk blouse falling just loosely enough over her shoulders to make me forget the reason I'd come. Mid-40s, maybe, but her presence filled the room in a way that made age irrelevant. She smiled when she saw me, that slow, deliberate kind of smile that says nothing and everything at once. "Red or white?" she asked, her fingers already tracing the neck of a half-open bottle of Cabernet. I didn't answer right away. My throat had gone dry, and she noticed. Of course she noticed. She always did. "Red." I managed, my voice a little rougher than I wanted. She poured, the deep, dark stream filling the glass like a secret being shared. When she handed it to me, her fingers brushed mine. Just a light touch, nothing deliberate. But it lingered, somehow, even after she'd turned back toward the counter. The room smelled faintly of vanilla and something floral I couldn't name. Her perfume, maybe. Or just her. "You don't talk much, do you?" she said, not turning around. I swallowed, trying to find words that didn't sound like lies. Not when I don't know what to say. That made her laugh, soft and low, like she'd been expecting that answer. She finally looked at me, really looked, and for a moment, I forgot what I was holding. Her eyes found mine and held them, unblinking, as if she were studying something only she could see. We talked, or really she talked, about the wine, about how the neighborhood had changed, about a restaurant she missed downtown. I nodded, asked a question here and there, but mostly I just listened. Every word seemed to wrap around the edges of the room, settling somewhere under my skin. At some point, she moved closer. Not enough to close the space, but enough that I felt the pull. The warmth of her shoulder when she leaned past me to set the bottle down. The faint brush of her hair when she turned her head. My chest tightened in a way I didn't have words for. "You don't have to be nervous," she said finally, almost teasing, almost not. "I'm not," I lied. The corner of her mouth curved, like she knew better. Like she always did. Silence fell for a moment, the kind that feels heavier than words. I took a sip, let the wine sit bitter and warm on my tongue. Anything to keep from saying the wrong thing. Then her voice, quiet, measured, cut through the air. "Finish the glass," she said, her eyes catching mine again. "Or finish me." The words didn't register at first, not really. Just the low hum of her tone, the way her gaze stayed locked on me, unflinching. Then the sound of footsteps, faint, coming from the hall. She straightened slightly, her expression shifting, guarded now. The front door creaked open. And just like that, the spell of the room cracked, leaving me standing there with the glass still warm in my hand, and 100 things I wanted to say caught somewhere between my chest and my throat. The footsteps faded almost as quickly as they came. "Just a neighbor dropping off a package," she said, brushing it off with a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. But the air between us never settled. She topped off my glass without asking, the bottle tilting in her hand like it weighed nothing, though her knuckles were pale from the grip. "You didn't tell me you lived alone," I said, just to cut the tension. She gave a small, knowing smile, the kind people wear when they've been asked the same question too many times. "Most people assume I don't," she said. "It's easier not to correct them." There was something in her tone, not sadness, exactly, but something close to it. I wanted to ask more, but I didn't. She didn't look like the type who wanted pity. She turned toward the window, eyes following the thin line of rain tracing the glass. "I used to think I was good at being alone," she said. "Turns out, I'm just practiced." I didn't know what to say to that. 23 years of living hadn't taught me what to say to a woman like her, one who carried silence like it was a choice. So I just said the only thing I could. "You don't seem alone." That earned me a look, sharp, quick, but not unkind. Like she wasn't sure if I was naive or brave. Maybe both. "I used to be married," she said finally, her voice softer now, like the words themselves were fragile. 8 years. He liked control more than he liked me. The room went quiet. She sipped her wine like a shield, but her hands trembled, just slightly, when she set the glass down. I wanted to reach across the space between us, to take her hand, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I asked, do you miss him? She laughed, a low, bitter sound. No. I miss who I thought I was when he wanted me. The honesty of it hit harder than I expected. For a while, neither of us spoke. The rain picked up outside, steady now, and the soft hum of the music filled the gaps we couldn't. Then she stepped closer, just a fraction, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her body through the thin space between us. You're staring, she said quietly. I blinked, caught, and looked away too fast. Sorry. Her hand grazed my shoulder as she brushed past me, just light enough to feel like an accident, but I knew better. My skin burned where her fingers had been. You don't have to apologize, she murmured, her back to me now. Every word felt heavier than it should have. Every pause felt loaded. I told myself I could leave, that I should leave, that whatever this was, it was too much, too soon, too complicated. But then she turned, leaning against the counter, her blouse falling open just enough to make my chest tighten, and I knew I wasn't going anywhere. You're what? She said slowly, tilting her head like she was studying me. 23. 24. I lied, though the lie didn't even feel convincing. Her lips curved into something between a smile and a warning. That's still very young. I swallowed. And you're, she raised a brow. Old enough to know better. She finished for me, her tone light, but her eyes anything but. We stayed there like that, staring, neither of us willing to move first. Then she stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the faint trace of her perfume, warm and floral and dizzying. She reached past me for the wine glass, her arm brushing mine, her breath grazing my cheek for a fraction of a second. It wasn't a kiss, not even close, but my body reacted like it was. When she pulled back, her eyes lingered on me just long enough to make my pulse stumble. And then, softer than before, almost like a secret meant only for me, she said, you should go before the rain stops. But neither of us moved. The rain hadn't stopped when I came back the next night. I told myself it was just to return the book she'd lent me, some novel she said I had to read, though I'd barely made it past the first chapter. But my pulse gave me away the second she opened the door. She looked softer this time. No heels, no silk blouse, just a faded sweater that slipped off one shoulder, and bare feet that made her seem almost human. You're persistent, she teased, stepping aside to let me in. Just punctual. I countered, though my voice caught halfway through. She laughed, quiet, low, and something in my chest tightened. The kitchen smelled like roasted garlic and wine. 2 glasses already sat on the counter. She'd been expecting me. We didn't talk much, not at first. She poured, I drank, the silence between us humming louder than the rain against the windows. Then my phone buzzed, sharp, jarring. A name lit up the screen. Mia? I flipped it over too quickly, the sound scraping against the countertop. She noticed. Of course she noticed. Girlfriend? She asked, her tone light, but her eyes sharp. No, I said a little too fast. Just someone. She studied me for a beat longer than was comfortable, then let it go. Someone must think they're important. I wanted to tell her they weren't. That no one was. But my mouth stayed shut. She moved closer, close enough that the edge of her sweater brushed my arm when she reached for the bottle. People talk. You know, she said casually, though there was nothing casual in the way her gaze lingered on me. If they see you here. If they see us. The words landed heavy. She wasn't wrong. There was a line, invisible but sharp, and we were dancing along it. I swallowed. Let them talk. That earned me a look, part disbelief, part something softer. You think it's that simple? I think, I said, my voice lower now. I don't care. Her breath caught, subtle, but enough that I heard it. For a moment, neither of us moved. The rain pressed harder against the glass, a steady drumbeat matching the thud in my chest. Then she stepped in, closing the space until there was nothing between us but the faint hum of her perfume and the warmth of her sweater brushing my sleeve. You should care, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Do you? I asked. Her eyes lifted to mine, and whatever answer she had got stuck in her throat. The room felt smaller, tighter, like even the air was leaning in. My hand twitched at my side, wanting, aching, to reach for her. Her gaze dropped to my mouth. Just for a second, but enough. Then, the sharp clang of a door somewhere down the hall. Voices. Laughter. She jolted back like she'd been burned, her wine sloshing against the rim of the glass. I stepped away too, my pulse loud enough I was sure she could hear it. "Neighbors," she murmured, forcing a smile that didn't quite fit. "They never mind their business." The voices faded, but the damage was done. The room felt different now, charged but fragile, like one wrong move would shatter it. I turned to leave, telling myself it was the right thing, the smart thing. But then she stopped me, her hand catching my wrist. Not tight, just enough to hold me there. "Stay," she said. Just that one word, softer than I'd ever heard her voice. I turned back. She was closer now, her face tilted up, her eyes dark and unreadable. I should have stepped away. I didn't. The space between us collapsed until I could feel the heat of her skin, until her breath mingled with mine. Her lips parted, just barely. And then, like it had been rehearsed by the universe itself, my phone buzzed again. The sound ripped through the moment, cruel and sharp. But neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. We just stood there, caught in the quiet, closer than we'd ever been, and too far gone to pretend otherwise that I didn't plan to see her that night. It was late, past midnight, and the neighborhood was quiet except for the steady hum of rain pooling in the gutters. My feet carried me to her door before my head could come up with a reason why. Maybe I just wanted to see her. Maybe I wanted her to tell me to go home. She opened the door without asking who it was. She must have known. Her hair was loose, damp at the ends like she'd just stepped out of the shower. The soft glow from the kitchen light made her skin look impossibly warm, and I swear, for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. "You shouldn't be here," she said, though her voice was quiet. "Weak." "I know," I said, "but I am." She didn't move, didn't open the door wider, didn't close it either. Just stood there, looking at me like she wanted to say 100 things but couldn't pick one. Finally, she stepped aside. "Come in," she whispered. The air inside was warmer than outside, thick with the faint scent of jasmine and wine. My jacket dripped onto the hardwood, but neither of us cared. She turned her back to me, busying herself with a towel, with anything that wasn't me. "You can't keep doing this," she said, her voice sharper now, though it cracked halfway through. "Doing what?" "Showing up. Looking at me like." She stopped herself, shoulders tightening. "Like you don't understand what you're asking for." I stepped closer, slow enough to give her space to pull away if she wanted to. She didn't. "I understand," I said quietly. "No," she whispered, still facing the counter. "You don't." I reached out before I could think better of it, brushing her damp hair gently over her shoulder. Her breath hitched, small, sharp, but she didn't move. "I'm not asking for anything you don't already want," I said, my voice lower now, closer to her ear. Her hands gripped the edge of the counter, knuckles white. "This is wrong," she said, but her voice trembled, betraying her. "Then tell me to leave," I said. "Say the words, and I'll walk out that door." Silence. Just the sound of the rain against the windows, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the uneven rhythm of her breathing. And then, softer than I thought possible, "I can't." That single confession cracked something open in the room. She turned then, finally, her face tilted up toward mine. Her eyes were dark, glassy, and something in them made my chest ache. "You don't know what you're doing to me," she said, almost a plea. I stepped closer until the counter pressed against her back, until there was nothing between us but the heat of our bodies and the weight of everything unsaid. "Then show me," I whispered. Her breath trembled against my cheek, her hands twitching at her sides like she wanted to touch me but didn't trust herself to. For a moment, neither of us moved. The world narrowed to the soft brush of her sweater against my shirt, the smell of her hair, warm, clean, and maddening. The way her pulse fluttered in her neck when I leaned closer. "This can't happen," she said, but it sounded less like a warning and more like a wish. "It already is," I said. She let out a shaky laugh, like she couldn't believe it, like she didn't want to. Then my hand found hers, fingers tentative at first, then tighter when she didn't pull away. "Tell me you don't want this," I said, my forehead nearly touching hers now. Her lips parted, a breath caught between us. But before she could answer, before the moment could break one way or another, a sharp knock rattled the front door. We froze. Neither of us moved, neither of us breathed, caught in that suspended second where everything was possible, and everything could still fall apart. The knock came again, louder this time, sharper, and she moved first. Her hand slipped from mine as she straightened, pulling her sweater tighter around her shoulders, like putting armor back on. I stepped away, my pulse hammering, every nerve on edge. She opened the door only a crack, just enough to reveal a man standing there, holding a bag of takeout. "Forgot your order last night," he said casually, smiling like he'd been here 100 times. "Figured you'd want it fresh." Her laugh was too quick, too bright. "You didn't have to. Of course I did." His eyes darted past her, just for a second, catching me where I stood in the dim kitchen light. His smile faltered, almost imperceptibly, but enough that the air shifted. "Thanks, Mark," she said tightly. "Really? That was thoughtful." She closed the door fast, leaning against it for a moment longer than necessary, her shoulders rigid. I stared at her, waiting. She didn't look at me when she said, "He's just a friend." "Didn't look like it," I said, the edge in my voice sharper than I meant. That got her to turn. "Don't," she warned. "Don't make this into something it's not." "Then what is it?" I asked, stepping closer despite myself. "What are we?" Her breath caught, but she didn't back away. "We are a mistake waiting to happen," she whispered. Something in my chest twisted. Anger, maybe, or fear, or both. "A mistake," I repeated, my voice flat. She flinched, just slightly. "I didn't mean, you did," I said, softer now, but no less sharp. "You've been telling yourself that since the first night. That this is nothing. That I'm nothing." "That's not true." "Then what is true?" I asked, closing the last inch between us. She blinked up at me, her breath shallow, her hands trembling where they gripped the edge of the counter. "I shouldn't want you," she said, voice breaking. "But I do." The words landed like a spark on dry grass, and suddenly the room felt too small, too hot. I stepped even closer, my chest almost brushing hers now. "Then stop pretending you don't." Her lips parted, but no words came. Her hand lifted, almost on its own, brushing against my arm as if to steady herself. For a moment, neither of us moved. The hum of the fridge, the muted patter of rain outside, everything else blurred until there was only her breath, the faint scent of jasmine clinging to her sweater. Then her phone buzzed on the counter, the screen lighting up with a name I didn't recognize. She saw it, and the color drained from her face. I frowned. "Who is it?" She hesitated, too long. "Someone I used to know," she said finally, her voice too careful, too even. I didn't believe her. She knew I didn't believe her. "It doesn't matter," she added, stepping back, putting space between us. "It does," I said, softer now. "If I'm going to stand here wanting you like this, it matters." Her eyes softened then, like she wanted to tell me something, everything, but couldn't. Instead, she just whispered, "You shouldn't have come tonight." But even as she said it, she brushed past me on her way to the sink, her shoulder grazing mine, the heat of her body leaving a trail that made my breath catch. I should have left. I almost did. My hand was on the doorknob when her voice stopped me. "Stay," she said, quiet but firm, like the words had been waiting on her tongue all night. I turned, meeting her eyes, and for the first time, there was no mask, no careful distance. Just her, raw, unguarded, and me, too far gone to turn back. Whatever happened next, there'd be no undoing it that I didn't move at first. Her voice, that quiet, steady stay, hung in the air, heavier than anything either of us had said before. I turned slowly, and there she was, framed in the kitchen light, her sweater slipping just off one shoulder, her eyes fixed on me like she wasn't sure if I'd obey or run. I didn't run. I stepped back inside, letting the door click shut behind me. The sound was too loud in the quiet, like a line being crossed, and maybe it was. She didn't speak. Neither did I. We just stood there, inches apart, letting the silence stretch until it wasn't silence anymore, but a pulse between us, thick and alive. "I can't keep doing this," she said finally, her voice trembling but low. "I can't keep pretending you don't what?" My voice cracked, and I hated how desperate it sounded. "Don't mean anything? Because you do. You know you do." Her hands curled against her sides, nails pressing into her palms. "You're too young," she whispered, like saying it out loud would make it true. "Then stop looking at me like you want me anyway," I said. That broke something. Her breath caught, sharp, and the mask she'd been wearing, the careful, guarded distance, slipped all at once. I closed the space between us in 2 steps. She didn't back away this time. She just stood there, every muscle in her body tight, like she was fighting herself and losing. I lifted a hand, slow, careful, like she might still tell me to stop. She didn't. When my fingers brushed her jaw, her eyes fluttered shut, and a quiet, shaky breath left her. "You don't have to do this," I murmured, my thumb grazing her cheek. "I know," she whispered. The rain outside had softened, barely a hush against the windows, and the only sound in the room was her breathing, fast, uneven, and the hard thud of my heart in my ears. She stepped closer first, her shoulder brushing my chest, her head tilting up just slightly. My hand slid into her hair almost without thought, the strands damp and soft against my fingers. "Tell me to stop," I said, my voice low enough that it was barely more than a breath. Her eyes opened, dark and glassy, holding mine like they'd been waiting for this. "I can't," she said, and then there was no space left. The world narrowed, her breath warm against my neck, her hands gripping my shirt like she was afraid I'd vanish. The dizzy hum of something that had been building for too long finally breaking. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't slow. It was messy and trembling and real. And when she finally pulled back, her forehead resting against mine, we were both breathless, caught in the wreckage of something that felt too big to name. "I shouldn't," she whispered, though there was no conviction in it now. "I don't care," I said, and meant it. For a long moment, we stayed like that, pressed together, breathing the same air, the weight of what we'd done settling over us, but not driving us apart. Then she laughed, soft and broken, the sound of someone finally surrendering to something they'd been fighting too long. "This changes everything," she said. "Good," I said, and I didn't let her go. In that quiet kitchen, with the rain easing and the hum of the refrigerator filling the empty spaces, the truth was simple. Whatever lines we'd crossed, whatever rules we'd broken, there was no going back. And for the first time since the first glass of wine, we both knew exactly where we stood. Together, no more pretending, no more almosts. It was dangerous. It was wrong. It was inevitable. And neither of us would take it back. Morning came soft and slow, slipping through the curtains in pale gold stripes. I woke to the quiet hum of her house, the refrigerator, the faint tick of a clock somewhere down the hall, and the steady warmth of her beside me. She wasn't asleep. I could feel it in the way her fingers traced lazy, distracted circles against my wrist, like she was trying to memorize the shape of me without admitting it. "You're awake," I murmured, my voice rough from sleep. "I never really slept," she said softly, not moving. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Not because I regretted it. God, I didn't. But because part of me expected her to. "You're thinking too loud," I teased gently, hoping to pull a smile from her. It worked, just barely. She let out a quiet laugh, the kind that curled low in her throat, and finally turned to look at me. "I don't know what happens now," she admitted. I reached for her hand, threading my fingers through hers. "Then we figure it out," I said simply. She hesitated, her gaze dropping to the space where our hands met, her thumb brushing over my knuckle like she didn't mean to. "People will talk," she whispered. "Let them," I said. "They don't get a say in this. In us." The word hung there. Us. And for the first time, she didn't flinch from it. Instead, she shifted closer, her forehead resting lightly against my shoulder, her breath warm against my collarbone. I held her like that, quiet and still, the weight of everything we weren't saying settling into something that finally felt steady. Later, over coffee in her kitchen, the conversation circled back to the thing neither of us wanted to touch, the years between us. "You're 23, she said, her hands wrapped around her mug, eyes fixed on the swirling steam. "I'm beautiful," I interrupted, because the number didn't matter. She looked up at me then, startled, and for a moment there was something unguarded in her eyes, something soft that hadn't been there before. "You're going to complicate my life," she said finally, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Maybe," I admitted, stepping closer, leaning against the counter beside her. "But you're not running. Not anymore." And she didn't. Instead, she reached for my hand again, tentative at first, then sure, and laced her fingers with mine. That night, we sat out on her porch, a bottle of wine between us, the air warm and quiet. She rested her head on my shoulder, and for the first time since all of this started, there was no tension, no sharp edge of fear or guilt. Just us, in the open, breathing the same easy air. "This doesn't feel like a mistake anymore," she said quietly. I turned my head, pressing a slow, careful kiss to her hair. That's because it never was, I said. She didn't argue. Instead, she shifted closer, her hand finding mine again, her thumb brushing over my skin like a promise she didn't need to put into words. Whatever the world outside would say, whatever noise would try to creep in, it didn't matter. Not here. Not with her leaning into me like I was something steady, something she'd chosen. I let the quiet hold us, the night stretching soft and endless, and for the first time, it felt simple. Not wrong. Not dangerous. Just ours. And when she finally tilted her face up to look at me, there was no hesitation in her eyes anymore. Just the quiet certainty that whatever this was, whatever it would become, we'd face it together. I kissed her then, slow and sure, the kind of kiss that didn't need to rush because we finally understood. Because there was no more pretending, no more almosts. There was just us. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?